Well, let's get some analysis now with Eyal Mayroz, who's a professor of international peace and security at the University of Sydney in Australia. Welcome to the program, Professor. We heard there that Russia is open to the idea of peace talks. We know there's been some disagreement over exactly where these talks should take place. Is this a good development? Do you believe that Vladimir Putin is genuinely interested in de-escalating the situation?
Well, there are a lot of guesses as to why Putin went in the first place. And so certainly one of the ways to come out is, and the most enduring one is peace talks. And so everyone would certainly welcome it. I think a lot of the war or the outcomes or the future outcomes of the war are being handled now and being litigated or run through international public opinion as well as Russian public opinion. To what extent and when will the reasons for Putin to go in will change, and the calculations will change, and so certainly a welcome development.
Yes, now on the surface it would appear that Russia is the aggressor here. Many would say that Ukraine hasn't provoked Russia. It hasn't launched any attacks to warrant such an assault from Russian forces. Given all that, who do you believe is winning this war of public opinion, if you like?
Well, it's too early to say. I think the international community is quite constrained, and it's in the tools that it has to pressure Russia. Sanctions, and we're talking about serious sanctions, it seems like at the moment, have a tendency to take a long time to be effective, if at all. So if Putin and the Russians did want, they could easily endure this pressure, this economic pressure, for as long as they need to, to take over Kiev and other parts of the Ukraine. But whether or not they want to, or what are the current assessments based on the international pressure that is very significant in terms of the outcome and the legacy of Putin, that many say was a major reason for going in, is a good question. And I think it seems like potentially, again, a positive development.
And we know that Russian forces in and around Kiev have faced some unexpected strong resistance from Ukrainian forces, as well as civilians who've chosen to take arms. Do you believe that this has taken Russian forces by surprise?
Well, I think there is a lot of guesswork being done in the last couple or 3 or 4 days about what did the Russians expect and what was their what were their calculations. It seems like, based on logic, that yes, this was a bit unexpected, but it's hard to know whether the decision to go into Ukraine was merely logic, because based on logic, I think many experts believed beforehand that the Russians wouldn't go in. So not sure about that. We can only guess.
Okay, and how much longer do you think this conflict will drag on for? We already have indications that both sides are ready to sit down and hold talks. Do you believe we've seen the worst of the fighting? Well,
again, it's hard to know. Putin seems to have climbed a tall tree, and he needs a ladder to go down. The move from the Security Council at the UN to the General Assembly is an important one, because obviously, Russia controls the veto power in the Security Council, but does not in the General Assembly. There is a meeting tomorrow of the Security Council to vote for moving the discussion to the General Assembly, which is a procedural vote, and therefore Russia cannot use its veto power. And then the General Assembly, at the moment, what seems like there is a worldwide condemnation of Russia's move. So hopefully something will come out again in terms of pressure and not so much a binding decision, because the General Assembly can only recommend moves and cannot issue binding resolutions.
You mentioned that the Western sanctions that have been imposed will take some time to have a real effect on the Russian economy and indeed on Vladimir Putin. But what about the other side of the Western response, the arming of Ukraine? We know Western powers say that they'll continue to supply weapons to Ukrainian defence forces. Do you think that's an effective measure here to strengthen the Ukrainian military in the face of the Russian aggression?
Well, it certainly is. NATO has been quite strong in its voice and in its actions. I'm particularly surprised with the German response of actually supplying weapons, which is a reversal of a very, very long foreign policy of Germany. So there seems to be quite a lot happening. The NATO countries are not obviously going to take active part in the war if they can help it, but some or many countries are afraid of some mistake that will lead to a deterioration. When countries go into war, they know what to expect initially, but so much can go wrong that we don't know. So certainly the move to supply what they call quote unquote defensive weapons is certainly an important part of the international position, if you like.
Okay, Professor Eyal Mayroz from the University of Sydney. We'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us on TRT World.
Thank you.